In the 1950s, the American kitchen was living its golden age. Housewives spent hours preparing recipes that have simply disappeared from our tables today. These were dishes that fed entire generations. They appeared at every family gathering, every Sunday dinner, every church social. And now, you've probably never even heard of most of them. Some of these recipes were absolutely delicious. Others, well, maybe they disappeared for a good reason. But every single one of them has an incredible story to tell. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and get ready for a journey straight into your grandmother's kitchen. These are the 10 ground beef recipes from the 1950s that the world forgot. Porcupine meatballs. If you saw this recipe on a restaurant menu, you'd probably think it's made with real porcupine. But relax, the explanation is much simpler and actually pretty creative. This recipe emerged during the Great Depression as a clever way to stretch ground meat. The secret was uncooked rice mixed directly into the meat. As the meatballs cooked, the grains would poke out like tiny quills, creating the look that gave the dish its name. It was simmered slowly in Campbell's tomato sauce, the absolute darling of American kitchens at the time. Moms loved this recipe because kids thought it was funny to eat something with an animal name. And it worked. It was practically impossible to find a Betty Crocker cookbook that didn't feature this recipe in the first few pages. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, porcupine meatballs ruled American dinner tables. After that, they simply disappeared as if they had never existed. Salisbury steak. This recipe was invented by a doctor who believed that eating only meat was the secret to perfect health. Spoiler, he was completely wrong about health, but he absolutely nailed the flavor. Dr. James Henry Salisbury created this dish during the American Civil War. He tested his meat-based diet on soldiers and, in 1888, published a book defending his theories. The dish was basically a seasoned hamburger patty, shaped into an oval and covered with a rich mushroom gravy. In the 1950s, Salisbury steak exploded in popularity. But that's when the problems started. When the first TV dinners hit the market, those frozen meals in aluminum trays, Salisbury steak became the main course in almost all of them. And that association wrecked its reputation. Today, when someone mentions Salisbury steak, the first image that comes to mind is an aluminum tray in the microwave, not the elegant dish it once was. Chow mein casserole. In the 1950s, Americans discovered Asian food and did what they always do with anything foreign, turned it into a casserole. This recipe was a curious fusion of supposedly Oriental flavors with a classic Midwestern casserole style. It used ground beef, cream of mushroom soup, water chestnuts, and on top, that crunchy chow mein noodle topping that came in a can. Homemakers served it at dinner parties and felt sophisticated, almost cosmopolitan. The ironic detail is that the only genuinely Asian ingredient in the recipe was soy sauce. Everything else was pure American invention. Also known as Minnesota hot dish in some regions, this dish faded away when real Asian food finally reached the suburbs and people realized the difference. Salisbury steak. This recipe was invented by a doctor who believed that eating only meat was the secret to perfect health. Spoiler, he was completely wrong about health, but he absolutely nailed the flavor. Dr. James Henry Salisbury created this dish during the American Civil War. He tested his meat-based diet on soldiers and, in 1888, published a book defending his theories. The dish was basically a seasoned hamburger patty, shaped into an oval and covered with a rich mushroom gravy. In the 1950s, Salisbury steak exploded in popularity. But that's when the problems started. When the first TV dinners hit the market, those frozen meals in aluminum trays, Salisbury steak became the main course in almost all of them. And that association wrecked its reputation. Today, when someone mentions Salisbury steak, the first image that comes to mind is an aluminum tray in the microwave, not the elegant dish it once was. It's formed leftovers into true culinary art. And the best part, you ate the dish along with the bowl. In the 1950s, wasting food was simply unthinkable. Stuffed bell peppers were born from this mindset. Leftover rice and ground beef from the previous day were given new life inside colorful bell peppers that served as edible bowls. Saving dishes was a real attraction in the post-war period. Convenience mattered as much as flavor. The peppers were baked until soft, covered with a generous layer of melted cheese. This recipe disappeared when people simply stopped cooking with leftovers. The concept of reusing ingredients became a thing of the past. Original beef stroganoff. This recipe came from Russia, became an absolute craze in the 1950s, and today almost nobody knows how to make it properly. The original dish emerged in 19th century Russia, named in honor of Count Stroganoff. It reached the United States through immigrants and exploded in popularity during the 1950s and 1960s. The American version adapted everything. It replaced strips of premium beef with ground beef, added cream of mushroom soup and sour cream, and served it over egg noodles. It was considered an elegant recipe, perfect for impressing guests at special dinners. What few people know is that the original Russian version never used ground beef. That was a purely American invention to make the dish more accessible. Hamburger pie. Imagine a cheeseburger, but in the form of a pie. Yes, the 1950s were exactly like that. This recipe took everything people loved about hamburgers and turned it into something that could be served in an elegant baking dish. The base was well-seasoned ground beef with Worcestershire sauce and onion. On top, a generous layer of mashed potatoes or Bisquick dough. To finish, melted American cheese covering everything. It was the perfect homemade fast food for large families. Some bolder versions mixed ketchup directly into the dough, creating a flavor kids loved. Hamburger pie perfectly represented the creativity of cooks of the time, transforming simple ingredients into dishes that felt special. Upside-down beef casserole. A recipe you literally flipped upside down before serving. The concept was ingenious. At the bottom of the dish went a mixture of ground beef with pinto beans and tomato soup. On top, a layer of cornbread batter, the cornbread the American South loves so much. When it came out of the oven, you inverted the pan onto a serving platter, and the golden cornbread ended up on the bottom, soaking up all the meat juices. It was basically chili and cornbread in a single dish. This 1950s recipe appeared in virtually every church cookbook and was a guaranteed presence at potlucks across the southern United States. Jellied meatloaf. Essa vi chocar você. Nos anos 50, os americanos colocavam absolutamente tudo em gelatina. Inclusive o meatloaf. A era de gelatina foi completamente real. Saladas, sobremesas, carnes, vegetais. Tudo a parar dentro do gelo. O jellied meatloaf levava esse conceito ao extremo. O bolo de carne era preparado normalmente e depois envolvido em uma gelatina feita com caldo de carne concentrado. A vantagem prática era que durava muito mais tempo na geladeira. Algo importante numa época em que as compras eram semanais. O visual era, digamos, interessante. Os livros de receitas da época dedicavam páginas inteiras a criacos com gelatina, cada uma mais elaborada que a outra. Hoje olhamos essas fotos e nos perguntamos o que exatamente passava pela cabeça das pessoas. American goulash. Don't confuse it with the Hungarian version. This goulash is 100% American and was born when the onion soup mix packet hit supermarket shelves. The American version emerged in the 1950s when Lipton launched its famous onion soup mix. Suddenly, any homemaker could create flavorful dishes in minutes. American goulash combined ground beef, elbow macaroni, tomatoes, and that magical packet that solved any seasoning problem. It was the perfect last-minute dinner, made entirely from ingredients every American pantry had. In some regions of the country, this same dish was known as American chop suey. This recipe perfectly represented the era of convenience foods, those practical meals that revolutionized the American kitchen and forever changed the way families ate. These 10 recipes tell much more than stories about food. They tell the story of an entire era. An era when families gathered around the table every night. When mothers spent hours in the kitchen wearing polka-dot aprons, and Sunday dinner was a true event. When no one threw food away, and creativity was the main ingredient in every recipe. Some of these dishes deserve to return to our tables. Others, like gelatin meatloaf, are probably better left in the history books. But all of them are part of the DNA of American cooking, what shaped generations and created memories that span decades. And you? Did your grandmother make any of these recipes? Tell us in the comments which one you'd like to try, or which one brings back memories from your childhood. If this video stirred up memories for you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more nostalgic journeys through America's past. See you in the next video.